Coming up on Forbidden Secrets. Odds are you'll be a victim of a scam sooner than you'll be a victim of a violent crime.
I can't believe I fell for this.
We'll expose the secrets of the most common door-to-door ripoffs you face. Plus, we'll tell you how to protect yourself from these doorstep predators.
Oh, I don't believe it.
Could the next terrorist attack be waged through biological warfare? How serious is the threat of bioterrorism? Discover the secret. Learn the truth. Could biological weapons be the ultimate terrorist threat?
Secrets.
And later, assassination plots have killed 2 popes and nearly murdered a 3rd. We'll take you behind the walls of the Vatican to see how the diabolical plot was carried out and why.
Secrets. Forbidden secrets. Forbidden secrets.
Whether in your home, on the street, or at your business, con men will come after you no matter where you are. But you feel safe and protected in your home, right? Wrong. Many types of scams actually target people in their homes. Why? Simple, because that's where we, their targets, spend a lot of our time. Scams and frauds are costing the residents in the United States billions of dollars every year.
You and I, maybe you could show me some things out here, and we'll let Eric go in there and do his sweep.
Odds are you'll be a victim of a scam sooner than you'll be a victim of a violent crime.
There really are no statistics on frauds and scams. Often what happens with fraud is that people either don't think that they're being frauded, or they consider it to be a civil case, and so they never report it at all, or they're just too embarrassed.
Fraud is a concern for everyone that's a consumer because everyone is part of the marketplace. And our department deals with those type of issues, whether there's internet issues, whether there's identity theft issues. It is a problem within our country and in every region, in every town, in every city of this nation.
These brazen con artists can sting you in your apartment, your high-rise condo, or in your house. With the help of our undercover staffers, let's walk through a couple of these doorstep scams to see how they unfold. First up is the familiar sight of a delivery man coming up the front walk. Our delivery man has a package for a neighbor who's not home.
Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, good, thanks. I've got a package for your neighbor right next door.
He asked if our victim will do her neighbor a favor and pay for what's due on the delivery.
Need a signature. Would you mind just accepting it for her and signing?
Sure.
Okay. And if you could sign right there.
Okay.
That first line. Well, there is a COD charge, $25 even. And if you know her pretty well?
Yeah. Would you take a check? Is that okay?
Yeah, a check is fine.
All right. Here you are.
Very good.
Like most of us, she's more than happy to help her neighbor out.
Who do I make the check out to?
I've got a stamp to make it real easy for you.
Perfect.
The secret of this scam and why it lives on and on is that con men know that most people want to be considered a good neighbor. Now, we wanted to know why this housewife so readily agreed to pay for a package supposedly intended for her neighbor.
Hello again.
So we went back with our camera crew to ask
You
her.
see the camera here? Okay, I have to let you in on the secret. I work for a TV news magazine.
Okay.
And what we're trying to do is protect people from being scammed. So what happened was that, well, the good news is you're going to get your money back, but the bad news is you fell for one of the oldest scams there is, the fake delivery guy. You want to go get the box and we'll take a look inside and see what you bought? Well, we'll just see what's in here.
Can't believe this.
Okay. Why don't you just reach inside and see what you bought for 25 bucks.
You've got to be kidding me. It's a brick.
Well,
Remember, a delivery man will never ask a neighbor to pay for someone else's package unless that agreement has been prearranged.
I am not.
If you haven't set it up in advance, don't pay. Chances are it's a scam.
I can't believe I fell for this. This is unbelievable.
In the con man's world, scare tactics always work well. One of the most common ways that scam artists gain entry into victims' homes is to show up at your door pretending to be a repairman from a local utility. Let's watch as two of our staffers approach this home with a warning of a possible gas leak.
Hi, hate to bother you, gas company. We've got some problems down the street here. Yeah, we had a cracked main line, and so now we're checking the whole street.
The whole focus of this scam is to get one of the con men into your home alone without you to keep an eye on them.
Okay. Don't look around. I haven't vacuumed, huh?
Not a problem, not a problem. As you can see, we're getting a little higher reading here than I would like to see outside.
Once they're inside, they'll quickly search through your home, stealing anything of value they can find and easily carry out.
The bathroom area looks clear. That fireplace in the living room, is that a gas fireplace?
Yeah, be sure and check that out real good. Do you have a basement?
No, no basement.
Okay, no crawl space?
No.
Okay, no basement or crawl space. Where's your hot water heater at?
Down the hallway to the left.
Okay, down the hallway to the left is the hot water heater.
Yeah, I see it here.
I mean, outside, you know, we like to check any pockets that could develop underneath things.
I'm in the kitchen now. We'll take a look in here, see how things are.
So you can see that.
I think the biggest asset that a con artist has is his personality. And I think that we are trained to think that people who are nice, people who are funny are honest people. That people who look you in the eye, people who connect with you, people who are able to have intimate conversations with you, that they're honest people. And the con artist really has developed these skills and uses them in such a way that they can just absolutely manipulate pretty much anybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, it looks clear. I'm going to head out now.
Oh, what a relief.
Good,
Thank
good
you.
One of the big problems of this type of scam is that the victims may not even know they've been ripped off for days or weeks later.
Thank you.
Once again, we returned with our cameras to ask why this housewife was so willing to give complete strangers the unsupervised run of her home.
Come on out here if you would. Can I ask you a question? You see, we've got a camera, so I have to tell you the
Yeah?
truth. It's
Oh my
really not
God.
from the gas company.
What is going on?
We're actually shooting a news story to
You
help
are?
people learn how to not be scammed. And the bad news is that we scammed you. Because,
You did?
yes,
Oh my God.
while I was keeping you occupied out here, my partner was inside. He was
Yeah?
only in there a few minutes, right?
Right.
Well, let's just see what he put in his toolbox. Let's just see.
Oh, I don't believe it.
Well,
I
let's see a wallet.
don't believe it.
We've got a wallet.
It's my wallet.
Your driver's license, credit cards,
Oh my, you got
even
all this?
cash. How long would it have taken you before you noticed they were gone? Probably we'd be long gone,
yeah.
even days before you even noticed they were gone,
For
right?
sure, my husband, he is going to kill me. Oh no.
Remember, if utility repairmen show up unannounced, check with the utility before you let them
Don't
in.
look around, I haven't vacuumed, huh?
Most utilities will never send a repairman out to your home without a specific appointment. And if you have any suspicions at all,
Well, it's all
don't
here.
let them in.
Well, I'm glad you are not for real. Oh my God.
Well, the minute that you think that you've been a victim of any scam, especially door to door, the number one thing to do is to call the authorities, because the perpetrators may still be in the area. They are still going to be working other houses. You are not going to be the only victim. You really do have a responsibility to your community to report the crime.
The deepest secret of the con man's world is that they rely on us, their targets, to be easy marks. Don't be afraid of asking hard questions. And if something seems suspicious, take the time to check it out. You might be very glad you did.
Coming up next on Forbidden Secrets. Could the next terrorist attack be waged through biological warfare? How serious is the threat of bioterrorism? Discover the secret. Learn the truth. When we reveal the secret threat of bioterrorism. Plus,
Secrets.
Born in the crucible of 21st century science. Cloning, a monstrous power, or the birth of a brave new world. Discover the secret. Learn the truth.
Secrets.
And now, a little secret of life. Why are wedding rings worn on the third finger of the left hand? The answer right after this.
Secrets. Forbidden secrets. Secrets. Forbidden secrets.
Why do we wear wedding rings on the third finger left hand? Well, the wedding ring tradition goes all the way back to ancient Egypt. The ring was a symbol for eternity with no beginning and no end, and made of pure gold to symbolize everlasting love and commitment. The ring was put on the third finger of the left hand because they believed the vein of love ran from this finger to the heart.
Secrets.
Some secrets are so forbidden that even the U.S. government has passed laws to stop you from finding the answers. We are at the threshold of creation. The union of science and technology has granted us the ability to duplicate life from a single cell.
Attempting to clone a human being is unacceptably dangerous to the child and morally unacceptable to our society.
But are we ready to take the ultimate step and clone a human? Randolph Wicker isn't your ordinary light shop owner, a single man who can't have a baby. Wicker has an extraordinary dream.
I want to be cloned because I never had children, and this would be my way of having a child that was truly my own.
Dr. Frankenstein's dream of creating life in a laboratory became a reality when Dolly, a sheep, was cloned in Scottish labs.
It was taken as a given among all scientists that cloning was impossible. And then this unknown barnyard researcher named Ian Wilmot succeeded in cloning Dolly. If you can clone a sheep is a mammal, that means that you can clone a human being.
Doctors are learning more about cloning individual genes, but cloning a human is still considered unethical and taboo.
It worked for Dolly, although the success rate wasn't great. Only 1 out of 500 trials actually worked. But there are specific phases in the sheep development which make sheep cloning still easier than human cloning. And I'm not saying that we wouldn't have eventually tools to clone humans, but the issue is, of course, can we risk, in the case of human, this failure rate?
But there are scientists in underground labs trying to clone a human. They risk losing hundreds of human embryos before one clone is created. Clones that do live might look strange, mutated, not really human. Religious leaders are concerned about scientists playing God in laboratories.
Bringing an embryo into being and then taking its life, you call it murder legally, but from a moral point of view, it's the deliberate taking of another human life.
Prior to Dolly's creation, an unknown Massachusetts company created the first viable human bovine embryo, the nucleus of a human cell, implanted in a cow's egg. Researchers in South Korea claim they have created a cloned human embryo in their lab. The embryo was destroyed. Only time will tell when a doctor chooses to bring a cloned embryo to term. And a group called the Raelians say they hope to clone the cells of a dead 10-year-old boy. They have a lab and 50 women lined up to act as surrogate mothers to bring the embryo to term. The location of this rebel lab is unknown. Scientists are learning the mysteries of recreating human genes. A donor cell with its DNA is isolated. A researcher working under a microscope extracts the DNA of the recipient cell, which acts as the egg. Then the donor cell with its nucleus containing DNA is inserted into the egg and fused to it by an electrical charge. The donor cell and egg form an embryo. The embryo is implanted in a surrogate mother. This fetus contains the same DNA as the donor cell, a clone.
I think quite possibly a human has already been cloned somewhere in the world by a fertility doctor who wanted a child.
Who gets to be cloned? Who should be cloned?
It sounds like we're seeking to create a master race with the Nietzsche Superman. And you have the whole question of who decides, of what is the criteria that establishes who is a better person. And it leads us into the whole area of the dominance of one group over another.
No one would want to ban all cloning. The ability to duplicate genetic material has enormous benefits. Doctors are researching cures for cancer, AIDS, and Parkinson's disease by cloning genes.
Diabetics are treated with the cloned human insulin. Human insulin gene has been taken and cloned, and the human insulin is produced. And that's one very practical use of cloning.
Cloning humans can change the tide of evolution. Still, thousands of people want to be cloned. Randolph Wicker plans to clone himself, even after he dies.
I plan to have DNA preserved, insert it into an egg to create an embryo and bring that embryo to term as my later-born twin.
People are lining up to be cloned, and rogue doctors are going underground regardless of law. Is there a Dr. Frankenstein out there? The age-old tug between science and religion continues.
I don't know that it's so much a question of trying to hold back the tide of science, it's more trying to channel science. It's a question of reminding science that they are truly, the knowledge is to be at the service of the human person, and it shouldn't be used to dominate the human person.
Coming up next on Forbidden Secrets. Attempts to find out the truth behind the deaths of recent pontiffs have proved extraordinarily difficult. But now, secret new information has surfaced proving that several recent popes were the victims of foul play, even murder. Then,
Secrets.
could biological weapons be the ultimate terrorist threat? Is it possible? Find out when we reveal the secret threat of bioterrorism.
Secrets.
And now, a little secret of life. How did the trench coat get its name? The answer right after this.
Secrets. Forbidden secrets. Secrets. Forbidden secrets.
So how was the trench coat named? 145 years ago, Thomas Burberry created a water-resistant fabric he named gabardine. Now, this fabric was used to make coats for World War I trench warfare, and the trench coat was born.
Secrets.
Today, many military experts agree that the United States is more likely to be attacked with a biological weapon than any other. Would you know the secret to your family's survival if a biological weapon was released in your city? Today, the gravest threat to you and your family's security no longer comes from a threatening superpower, but from rogue nations and extremist groups who are willing and able to inexpensively develop and deploy biological weapons. David Segrist is a research fellow at the Potomac Institute for Policy Studies in Washington, D.C., and specializes in issues surrounding bioterrorism.
A terrorist might choose biological weapons because ounce for ounce they're more lethal, more potent than other weapons. They can be hidden in small places and they have no detectable signature, so that if you're bringing them across a border, you can hide them in plain sight and people could look at them and not know that they were deadly weapons.
The Center for Civilian Biodefense Studies is headquartered at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland. Deputy Director Dr. Tara O'Toole is one of the nation's foremost authorities on the potential threat of biological attacks.
I think a biological weapons attack on U.S. civilians is much more likely than a missile being lobbed across the Pacific or the Atlantic towards America. For one thing, biological weapons are more available. They've been called the poor man's atomic bomb. A number of biological materials might be suitable for making a biological weapon. One could use bacteria, such as anthrax, or viruses such as smallpox, or toxins, which are materials elaborated by organisms such as the botulinum toxin. The trick is to distribute those materials, whether they be viruses or bacteria or whatever, in such a way that they would infect large numbers of people if you're a bioterrorist bent on making a big show of causing illness in a large population.
In 1995, the Aum Shinrikyo cult in Japan released sarin, a deadly nerve gas, onto a Tokyo subway platform, killing 12 and injuring hundreds. Although sarin gas is not a biological agent, investigations revealed that the Doomsday Cult had previously experimented with anthrax, recognized as one of the most lethal biological organisms on Earth.
Anthrax, I believe, represents head and shoulders the outstanding biological terrorism threat.
When you inhale the bacteria, one typically comes down within 24 hours or more. It could be days or even weeks before you start getting sick with what looks initially like the flu. But about 24 hours after you first become ill, you become very, very ill. And once you're symptomatic, there's very little that modern medicine can do to save you.
In a biological attack, anthrax has a 98% fatality rate untreated. The U.S. military has taken a decision to vaccinate its members against anthrax, which is the very straightforward way to protect them against the hazards of anthrax. However, they've currently stopped inoculating new people, starting new courses of vaccination for troops because of a lack of anthrax vaccine.
Although anthrax is the most feared of biological agents, there are other more commonly known and equally lethal pathogens that could be used in an attack.
Smallpox doesn't cause any symptoms for about 2 weeks after first exposure. And then one again gets ill in a manner that suggests the flu or a cold, high fever, achiness, and so forth. No one has been vaccinated in the United States, or indeed in most of the world, for smallpox since 1979, because the disease was eradicated by the World Health Organization. Concerns that terrorists might use smallpox as a weapon are among the worst-case scenarios of bioterrorism that we might contemplate. We have a small stock of smallpox vaccine available now, but not nearly enough even to protect a single city. So you would have to decide who you're going to vaccinate.
In the event of a biological attack, hundreds and perhaps thousands of people will be dependent on an already overburdened public health system.
There's very little room in the American healthcare system today to absorb extra patients or to meet sudden demand for healthcare, as we prove every winter during the flu season, when emergency rooms become overloaded, ambulances have to be diverted to other hospitals because everything is getting backed up and so forth.
With current levels of domestic preparedness at an all-time low, even a limited attack could create a public health disaster. But the larger question remains: what can really be done to prevent this nightmare?
The questions for public officials will become ultimately very simple. How can you get approximately 85 grams of antibiotic for every man, woman, and child in your location, and how can you get it overnight?
Because it takes months to years to actually go from a standing start to having a vaccine in hand. We have to think anew about what I'll call biosecurity. Not only do we have to be prepared to handle the worst, most nightmarish aspects of black biology, of deliberate destructive uses of biological knowledge. We need to think carefully about the unforeseen and unintended consequences of these new powers.
Coming up next on Forbidden Secrets. It's an underground population that exists in every major American urban center.
My wife passed away. That's when my life went to hell.
Today, the homeless population is exploding. Now, discover the secrets to living on the streets from those who know. Then, discover the secret. Learn the truth. What force is behind the diabolical plot to assassinate the head of the Catholic Church.
Secrets.
And now, a little secret of life. Why does your nose run when you cry? The answer right after this.
Secrets. Forbidden secrets. Secrets. Forbidden secrets.
So why does your nose run when you cry? Well, your nose runs because tiny tubes run from your eyes to your nose. And when you cry, the fluid runs into your nose and thins the mucus. Could this mean that the nose is truly the window to the soul?
Secrets.
They live in a city called homeless, in a state called poverty. Whole cities of the forgotten, hidden in plain sight. And while there are lots of ways to get there, the secret is to survive, one day at a time. Could you? It's a community within a community. A place with its own laws, its own economy, its own culture, and its own way of surviving. Listen and learn from the voices you seldom hear, the secrets of the down and out. You see them, we all do. Panhandling for spare change, washing a window at a stoplight, hoping for a handout, and of course, pushing shopping carts full of the baggage of a broken life. It's an underground population that exists in every major American urban center. A couple of strings of bad luck and you too could be homeless. Meet Jackson, an unemployed carpenter living in the homeless city of New York.
But the thing is, right, is to stay alert, you know what I'm saying? So when I go to sleep, right, and I wake up and I'm like, wow, it's cold.
Many of the homeless are like Jackson. He had a regular job, but with New York apartment rents spiraling out of control, he had nowhere to go but the streets.
Ain't nothing up in there.
There are 375,000 homeless people on the streets of Los Angeles, ignored, forgotten, often despised.
I used to be a contractor. I did it for 24 years until my wife passed away. She passed away in 1989, and that's when my life went to hell.
Almost 1/3 of the homeless are vets, but perhaps more shocking, 20% are children, as the homeless population of women rises.
Single homeless women and the number of women with children have increased dramatically in the Skid Row area, and they are especially a vulnerable part of the population, especially in Skid Row, where, you know, they might be subject to all kind of assault.
If the worst happens, survival secret number one, stick together.
Yeah, we look out for each other, like if somebody leaving, you know, we don't let nobody go on their tents and stuff. We look out for
And
them.
because everybody knows out here it's kind of hard, you know.
Even though I'm hobbled, she's my friend, you know, so I'm gonna look out for her like that.
There are several ways to make money when you're homeless. One of the most popular is scavenging trash heaps and garbage cans.
Oh, we got some money here. Yeah, we do. Corona. That's right.
People you see pushing shopping carts with cans and bottles in them, they sell them right up the street there to make a living.
I got a pretty good eye for it, and I can tell by going in the trash, I can feel what's in there. I don't have to open the bag until I have to.
But I got a magnet. If something sticks to the magnet, it ain't no good.
While the glass is 5 cents a pound. The glass is not 5 cents per bottle like they charge you in the store. It's 5 cents a pound. Plastics are 50 cents a pound, plastics total, and the cans are $1 a pound.
A lot of these bottles ain't good, and it depends on where you're taking them to. Earlier today, I made $28. But see, I didn't really work hard. Yesterday, I made $55. So it all depends on how hard you work.
In high-density downtowns, you can make up to $100 for a back-breaking day of scavenging for bottles or turn to panhandling. Some are better at it than others.
To be a good panhandler, you have to already have very good people skills. Never approach anybody when they're not looking at you, or if you do, approach them 5 or 10 feet away and get their attention. When they turn towards you, then you can begin to talk to them. It'll help you a lot to smile. If you can even sometimes strike up a conversation, I'll sing and dance for you. Burger and soda at Big Macs, what do you say? Could you spare any change today? Poco cambio mucha ayuda para mí. Oh, man, especially with you. God bless, have a good day. I do have 3 or 4 established routes that I can take or choose to take, yeah. The foot traffic is pretty good, especially at peak time. The office workers are pouring off from these places and that place, you know. The traffic is okay, the bus stops, you know what I mean? On 3 corners. You're worried about the volume, you know? You need a good number of people that can hit. A lot of people have the policy, a lot of folks, you know. No money, you know, but I'll buy you a great meal. Always take the food. Good afternoon. Could you spare any change today, sir? I'd so appreciate it.
After a hard night's work, you need to find shelter to rest. Upscale shelter is a tent.
I sit around one night, and a guy over there, he had another little setup. But he went and got this and he made a double out of it. Different guys gave me the blankets.
For most, home is a place on the sidewalk where the cops leave you alone. Experts say homelessness is a temporary condition, or so the theory goes. The homeless agree. They know the final secret to surviving is to believe things are going to get better.
There are those that still keep the faith and have the hope, and they'll find some way, you know, to go to a shelter, you know, go to a mission.
I know I'm going to get out. I know that.
I would say for those who are worried about being out there, people are really good. I'm talking black, white, Latino, Asian, Jewish, Native American.
It's not my desire to be homeless or to be staying down here for the rest of my life. I'm not going to give myself the normal way of living. The normal way of living.
One way to keep your spirit up is to realize that it's temporary. And it's encouraging to you the number of people that will help you, the number of folks that will help you.
If you wish to help the homeless, you can support organizations that fight poverty, but you can also give of yourself. Soup kitchens and shelters are always in need of volunteers.
Coming up next on Forbidden Secrets. Assassination plots have killed 2 popes and nearly murdered a third. We'll take you behind the walls of the Vatican to see how the diabolical plot was carried out and why.
And now, a little secret of life. Is glass a liquid or a solid? The answer right after this.
Secrets, forbidden secrets. Secrets, forbidden secrets.
Is glass a liquid or a solid? Well, people used to think glass was an extremely thick liquid. We now know glass has the qualities of both liquid and solid. You see, atoms in glass stay in one place as in a solid, but they are jumbled in a liquid. So glass is best described as a shapeless or non-crystalline solid.
Secrets.
Behind the walls of the Vatican lie secrets that have collected for centuries. Secret information recently revealed murder plots on the life of Pope John Paul and 2 of his predecessors. Shocking disclosures have revealed that 2 popes in the last 60 years were murdered, assassinated to ensure their silence. Popes Pius XI and John Paul I were poisoned. The luckier John Paul II survived the attack of a hired gunman. In each case, these men found themselves opposing the will of superpower governments. But attacks on the Pope are not new. As head of the Roman Catholic Church, the Pope is one of the most important figures in the world. He carries tremendous power and influence over 1 billion faithful followers. In 1939, Pope Pius XI was faced with the evils of the Axis regime. He became convinced that the Catholic Church needed to take a stand. Secretly, he prepared a document condemning the violent and racist acts of the Italian fascist and the German Nazi governments. But 2 days before he could publish this courageous declaration, he died suddenly and suspiciously. And evidence points to Benito Mussolini as the man who gave the order to kill. According to Avro Manhattan, best-selling author of the book Murder in the Vatican, the assassin may have been the Pope's personal physician, Dr. Petacci. Dr. Petacci was a fascist spy and was the father of Mussolini's mistress. Manhattan's book chronicles the following timeline.
The condition of the papal patient had been reasonable and fair when, between the 8th and 9th of February, the Pope became suddenly very ill. In the evening, the Pope seemed to have recovered and to be well. Then, at 5:30 in the morning of the following day, he suddenly died. During the evening, Dr. Petacci was the only man known to have come in contact with the Pope. An embalming of the Pope was carried out immediately. Determining the exact cause of death would now be impossible. Cardinal Tisserand, the most trusted advisor of Pope Pius XI, believed that Dr. Petacci had administered poison injections into the pontiff. Dr. Petacci was also the man who embalmed the Pope quickly, an order given by Vatican Secretary of State, Cardinal Pacelli. In this, Pacelli not only aided in covering up evidence of foul play, but then also succeeded in destroying all evidence of the dead Pope's anti-Nazi documents. Less than 2 weeks later, Pacelli would be elected Pope and take his place as Pius XII. He would never utter a word in public against the Nazis or the anti-Semitic laws that fueled the Holocaust.
Almost 40 years later, poison would again be used to end the life of a pope. 1978. As detailed in David Yallop's book, In God's Name, almost immediately after Pope John Paul I took office, he told his associates that one of his first goals as Pope was to rid the Vatican Bank of corruption. Yallop details a previous U.S. Justice Department investigation that uncovered a mafia-controlled fraud scheme tied directly to the Vatican Bank, and specifically to the office of the director, Bishop Paul Marcinkus.
For a bank president, Bishop Marcinkus constantly displayed an alarmingly poor memory, with U.S. investigators as well as with Italian reporters. Now the new Pope was poised to reveal the scheme. The Mafia and the Vatican had a major reason to silence this Pope. On September the 28th, 1978, at 3:30 in the afternoon, John Paul took a meeting with his Vatican Secretary of State, Cardinal Villot. John Paul informed Villot that he intended to replace him within a week. Stunned, Villot left John Paul at 7:30 p.m. John Paul retired for dinner and eventually went to bed at 9:30. He took along paperwork that outlined his plans for reconstruction of the Vatican staff. At 4:45 the next morning, when the pontiff had not come out for his coffee as usual, his attendant, Sister Vincenza, peered into his door. To the nun's horror, his face was frozen in an agonized grimace of painful death. After only 33 days as Pope, John Paul I was dead.
Yallop describes the inexplicable actions of Cardinal Villot on the morning of September 29th.
Villot first locked himself inside the papal bedroom. Then he confiscated the dead Pope's prescription medications from the bed table and all of John Paul's paperwork. Also taken were the candies the pontiff often enjoyed while reading, as well as the Pope's slippers and reading glasses. None of these items were ever seen again.
Yallop then discloses what is perhaps the most damning evidence of all.
At 6 a.m., Villot ordered embalmers to be summoned, but incredibly, the embalmers arrived within 5 minutes. Given the distance they had to drive, they couldn't have been contacted any later than 4:45 to 5 a.m., the same time that Sister Vincenza had discovered the body. Below pushed for an immediate embalming, and any forensic evidence of foul play was permanently destroyed by this procedure.
"12 days later, a new pope was elected, a staunchly anti-communist Pole, John Paul II. With secret backing from the CIA, this pope set about offering clandestine money and support for trade unions across Europe. Both the church and labor groups talked brazenly about a right-wing revolution. It seemed one man was threatening to bring down communism single-handedly. The only thing perhaps more surprising to the CIA was that the KGB hadn't tried to stop the Pope. But on May 13, 1981, Muhammad Ali Ajka stood outside the Vatican Basilica in the crowd waiting for the Pope to ride through. As John Paul II came by, Ajka pulled a pistol and fired 3 times. The Pope was seriously wounded, but would recover. Ajka was caught and put on trial. At first he asserted that he had acted on his own. Paul Hinzey's book, The Plot to Kill the Pope, transcribes Ajka's statements. In November of 1982, he finally admitted the shooting was part of a secret conspiracy run by the Bulgarian Secret Service and masterminded by the KGB. As explained in Hinzey's book, Ajka laid out the precise details of the plot and gave names of the Bulgarian conspirators to Italian police.
13 May, Ajka picked up by Bulgarians at 3 p.m. and driven with stops at Ivazov's apartment to pick up gun, an overnight bag with grenade. On November the 25th, 1982, one of Ajka's accomplices, Serge Ivanov-Antonov, was arrested and charged with involvement in the assassination attempt. Soon the list of those arrested included 3 other Bulgarians and 4 Turks.
In the spring of 1985, the trial of the 8 accused conspirators began. But Ali Ajka began a bizarre tirade that greatly discredited the prosecution. According to Edward Herman and Frank Broadhead's book, The Rise and Fall of the Bulgarian Connection, Ajka stated,
"I am Jesus Christ. I possess the secret of Fatima."
Because of this unexplained behavior, the Italian court acquitted the accused conspirators. All the same, to this day, all of the circumstantial evidence and the assassin's own words implicate the KGB. The toll is clear, and the secret has been revealed. Pope Pius XI, murdered by the fascist dictator Mussolini. Pope John Paul I, murdered by a deadly convergence of the Mafia and the Vatican. And John Paul II, gunned down by the KGB. Perhaps the exposure of the truth will stop the murder of a future pope before it's too late. I'll see you next time on Forbidden Secrets.
On the next episode of Forbidden Secrets, see how one FBI agent tackled corruption from within the Bureau and the price he paid.
An FBI that would do the things that we saw and knew were being done would stop at nothing to avoid accountability, nothing.
Then, it's called The Sport of Kings. Behind the color and pageantry of horse racing is an ugly secret. Jockeys are dying to make the weight. Plus, are aliens kidnapping humans? If so, it's a full-time job. Is it really happening? If not, what is? Discover the secret. Alien abductions.
Secrets.